There was this girl I met completely by accident, and honestly, if I had decided to go home a little earlier that day, this video probably wouldn't even exist. It wasn't even my class. I was just standing around when someone dragged me into a psychology experiment because they needed another participant. I thought I would answer a few questions, help them complete their activity, and then continue with the rest of my day. Instead, I met someone I would still be thinking about months later. The experiment looked like a normal eye test at first. They showed me images that looked similar to an Ishihara color blindness test, the ones made of colored dots with a number hidden in the middle. But the experiment wasn't really about whether I could see the number correctly, it was about conformity. The people around me were instructed to deliberately give the same wrong answer, even when the correct number seemed obvious, just to see whether I would trust my own eyes or start doubting myself and follow the group. Would I say what I genuinely saw, or would I conform because everyone else sounded so certain? That was how I met her. During the activity, we started talking, and somehow the conversation felt surprisingly natural. It wasn't some dramatic movie scene where time stopped and music suddenly started playing in the background. It was just two strangers talking, laughing, and becoming comfortable around each other much faster than I expected. I remember approaching her, asking questions, and eventually getting her social media. Even her friends started teasing us, which made the whole moment feel like it might actually lead somewhere. I sent her a follow request afterward, but she never accepted it. And technically, that should have been the end of the story. There was no relationship, no date, no confession. There wasn't even a proper rejection. There was only a conversation, a follow request left unanswered, another brief encounter later on, and a story that never got the chance to develop into anything real. But for some reason, those are sometimes the stories that stay with us the longest. Movies love romanticizing yearning. They make longing look beautiful, as though constantly thinking about someone is proof that the connection must have been special. They tell us that if two people are meant for each other, life will eventually bring them back together. And when you talk about missing one person, people will usually remind you that there are billions of other people in the world. There are plenty of fish in the sea. There will always be someone prettier, kinder, or more compatible. And maybe that's true. But here's the strange thing about being human. Out of billions of beautiful faces, your mind can still return to the one story that never got the chance to unfold. That is what yearning actually feels like. It isn't always missing someone you loved for years. Sometimes it is missing someone you barely got the chance to know. You aren't remembering anniversaries, late-night conversations, or an entire relationship. You're remembering a possibility. You're thinking about conversations that could have happened, places you could have gone, and the person you might have become if you had been a little braver at the right moment. For me, there wasn't a breakup. There weren't years of memories together. There were only two brief encounters and a lot of unanswered questions. I remember thinking I would probably see her again. We were attending the same school, so why wouldn't I? But life kept moving. Classes changed, schedules stopped aligning, and eventually I learned that she had transferred to another school. That was when it really hit me. Not because I had lost a relationship, but because I had lost the possibility of finding out whether there could have been one. For months, I kept replaying those moments in my head. What if I had talked to her a little longer? What if I had said hi when I saw her again, instead of assuming there would always be another chance? What if I had known she was going to transfer? Would I have acted differently? Maybe nothing would have happened. Maybe she simply wasn't interested. And the unanswered follow request was already the answer I didn't want to accept. Maybe if we had gotten to know each other, we would have realized that we were completely incompatible. Or maybe it could have become something meaningful. I'll never know. And that uncertainty is exactly why the memory stayed. Psychologists describe part of this through something known as the Zeigarnik effect. The idea that unfinished experiences can remain more mentally active than completed ones. There is also counterfactual thinking, which is our habit of replaying the past and imagining alternative versions of it. What if I had said this? What if I had stayed longer? What if I had made a different choice? Our minds keep revisiting missed opportunities because they never received a clear ending. I think that's why yearning can hurt so much. Reality has limits, but possibility doesn't. When a story never gets the chance to continue, your imagination quietly continues it for you. And the version created by your imagination is usually more beautiful than reality ever could have been, because it never has to deal with awkwardness, incompatibility, rejection, bad timing, or disappointment. Maybe she wasn't the love of my life. Truthfully, I didn't know her well enough to call her that. Maybe I wasn't even yearning for her as a real person. Maybe I was yearning for the version of her my mind created, and for the version of myself who had taken the chance instead of hesitating. That realization gave me a strange kind of peace. I wasn't holding on to a relationship. I was holding on to a future I had imagined, and those are two very different things. Missing a real person means remembering who they actually were. Missing potential means grieving everything they could have been. If I ever see her again, I think I'll finally just say hi. Maybe we'll catch up and laugh about how randomly we met through a psychology experiment. Maybe I'll learn that the connection only felt significant from my side. Maybe nothing will happen at all, and honestly, I'm learning to be okay with that. Because sometimes people enter our lives for only a moment. Not necessarily because they were destined to become our forever, but because they reveal something about us. They show us how deeply we can attach ourselves to possibility, how much fear can cost us, and how important it is to act while a door is still open. Maybe that is why we yearn for someone we never really had. Not because they were perfect, but because the story remained unfinished. And unfinished stories allow us to imagine that they could have been.